Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. What a nice turnout. Life is good. It's still light out at 7:02 p.m. My goodness. Today is Thursday, March 27th, 2025. It is 7:02 p.m. I call this meeting of the New Shoreham Town Council to order. Mona, are you ready?
Yes.
Fantastic. For people who were not here yesterday, just so you know, the meeting went on for quite a while, and we had people who needed to catch ferries, and then people like me who were tired. So we did not do revenue last night. So we're going to do revenue tonight as part of this first section of the budget.
We also skipped Public Works.
Oh, right. We skipped public work because which we'll do next week when Mike's back.
All right.
Great. Terrific. Thank you. Just to let people know.
Okay. I'm actually going to pass this off. Yes, to Amy. Revenue.
I'm going to do revenue.
Oh,
Hi.
welcome back.
Thank you. And so we'll start on page 2 of the financials, actually also page 2 of the narrative, which is tax revenue. And the number that people always want to know first is what the proposed tax levy increase is. So the budget you have in front of you proposes a 3.75% increase in the tax levy. As most of us know, the state law caps the levy increase at 4%. We have assumed a 99% collection rate, which is consistent with prior years. There have been a couple changes at the state level in terms of motor vehicles, which are fully phased out. And we receive now a fixed amount, $164,315 for motor vehicle reimbursements. Last year, the state also exempted the first $50,000 on tangible personal property and reimburses us for the lost amount in the first year. So again, that reimbursement is going to be frozen, at least for now. And that is $14,181. So as time goes by, that $14,000 will continue to be diluted. It'll be fixed at that level, but at least it is there for today. And then just a little bit of a reminder in that table in the narrative that talks about the levy increase versus the mill rate. Because in most years, it's a little hard to see in the reval years, but in most years, the levy increase is higher than the mill rate increase, meaning we have the benefit of property owners being sort of diluted and diversified by new construction in the community, so that your individual tax bill generally increases at a rate lower than the overall levy. And that's just helpful for people to see sometimes. Questions on taxes before we move on?
The only thing is not a question, but given that Nancy and Bill were not here when we did pass the homestead, I think it would be worthwhile at some point during these next few budget sessions just to make sure we do a good backgrounder for them, frankly, a refresher for me and for the community about how that works. And I believe we have to set it again, et cetera, et cetera. Not for now.
Can I give you one sentence?
Oh, absolutely. Please.
Because we will do a full, sort of a full reminder of the history. The very short version is for this upcoming tax year, the ordinance stands as it was.
Great.
So the homestead exemption paperwork will be out through the assessor's office for application again this year. You will apply again and everything will be as it was last year. After that, the council will need to take additional action to either keep it going, make changes, et cetera.
Great. Terrific. Thank you, Amy.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Turning the page, page 3 on the budget page, we're looking at licenses, permits, and fees. Overall, a 7% increase, and the majority of that is really the short-term rental revenue, which is the last item on the page. Our estimate, and we're pretty close to this at this point, is $95,000 in revenue. That's partially offset by adjustments in recording fees and other clerk's licenses and fees. Those are driven mostly by real estate transactions, but we are predicting a continued decline in those for a net increase of 48,800. So short-term rental is the last line. Other clerk's licenses and fees, yep, is sort of right in the middle of the page with a recommended amount of 215,000. And then the other one that changes is recording fees, line 4050, with a recommended budget for 26 of $40,000. And sort of as we say in this room a fair amount, most of our licenses, permits, and fees are at the state maximum or set by state statute.
That's one of the things I was gonna ask. I know we dealt with some of the, for lack of a better description, the zoning application fees relatively recently.
Yes,
if I
last
recall
year.
correctly. And I'm just wondering whether, as you're tracking, first of all, are those capped at the state level? And secondly, as we track the expenses, administrative expenses associated with the new zoning statute, I would assume assuming those fees aren't capped, we would want to capture the effort and the staff time.
It's something we'll be looking at. I was surprised when the state put out its requirement that we move to an online platform for zoning and planning permitting, that
Mhm.
they didn't also set statewide fees, which is what they
Right.
did on the building side.
Sure.
So at the moment, there is room for us to continue to set those locally.
Thank you.
Other questions on licenses, permits, and fees? Moving ahead to other town fees and income, which are page 4 and 5 of the budget. The biggest increases we're going to see here are related to harbors, since we increased both the rental mooring rates and the commercial wharfage, which is Old Harbor Dock. So you've got increases in the sort of middle of the first page, $150,000 in rental mooring increase, which is pretty substantial, smaller in some of the other harbors categories, but that will be material. And we did see a pretty significant increase in the harbor's expense budget as well as the harbor's capital. So keeping that pretty closely related. One of the other items I'd call your attention to is on the second page of other town fees and income under rents. The fourth line down under rents, Thomas property rents, we have a placeholder in here now, 81,600. Those are using some market estimates for the 4 units at the Thomas property. Obviously, the actual rent will be set by a policy of the council, but we wanted to have some sort of reasonable placeholder in there, subject to final decisions.
What's your timing on, I know that the eligibility for occupying those units is pushed back about 30 days. Are we gonna, do you envision having that on an upcoming agenda?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in April, probably over several meetings.
Wonderful.
And as you mentioned, occupancy right now is pushed off to June.
Great, thank you.
Amy, would that include the town manager's house also?
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, when we talk about the 4 new Thomas units, we'll also talk in parallel about the manager's house, appropriate rents policy, things like that.
Under the Chamber of Commerce rent,
Mhm.
Is part of that agreement that has been talked about a foregoing of that 10,000 or?
So We've kept the 10,000 both on the revenue and the expense side, which is how it's been maintained over the years. When we get to community support in the visitor center, we'll talk about what's different going forward. But we've kept the revenue to the town for the leasing of that space at the $10,000 level.
But it's been waived the past couple of years.
It has not been waived, it has been offset. So there's an equal revenue and expense, but it's not that the rent has been waived.
Get that, Bill?
We're gonna talk about that.
We'll talk about that. One of the other items, it's new in the budget, but has been in practice now for a few years. The second to last line, line 4450, State Bluffs Agreement. This is an MOU between DEM and the town for regular maintenance of the Bluffs area. And that's up to $20,000 a year that DEM reimburses us for the work of the Public Works and Highways team. So we're showing that as a budget number for the first time.
I should ask this of Mike, but is that 20, does the work at the bottom of the stairs, is that
The work at the
taken
bottom
out of that 20?
right
or-
now is small enough in scale that we can easily fit it into the 20.
Yeah.
If it were anything excessive, we would not hesitate to ask for additional
Right.
reimbursement.
Huh?
So.
Amy, to that, isn't, when the director was out here, isn't the work on the bottom of that gonna be substantial? Because of, I mean, if they do any more than a platform?
I think we were talking about two different scopes of work. So what's planned for this spring is substantial enough to get it open, but is actually not supposed to be very costly. And won't include any construction of wooden platforms. It's mostly earth and rock moving. What's on the long-term conversation is which components of the actual stairs need to be rebuilt or reconfigured, including possibly replacing the platform that exists and or adding another one to help traffic flow.
And that would
So
be-
those are in long-term plans with a much higher cost to them.
Do we have someone that inspects that staircase? Because it's what, 25 years old now?
So we had a team from DEM who did do a site visit prior to the director's visit. And that did not include a structural engineer. And we've put off that part of the analysis for a little bit. We think we can manage with what we have at the moment. Other questions on other town fees and income?
The only other one I have, Amy, is on the insurance. Now, we're expecting some money back. So would that be under that 4267, the insurance and other recoveries? Is that,
That's where we would account for it when it comes. We don't have a revenue item associated with it now. Yeah.
but that's where we'll.
Yeah.
And I think so people know that's referring to the, when the lightning struck at the police station, that equipment.
If we want to move on then to page 6 of the budget. Page 3 of the narrative talks about state aid, where we actually have a small reduction, but that's entirely related to school bond reimbursements. We have an item on debt service. The 2005 school bond has matured, so that debt service goes away. That means the state reimbursement for their portion also goes away. The state aid numbers for hotel, cottage, and meals tax, those come from the governor's budget. Sometimes we use our numbers, sometimes we use theirs. We are using their estimates at the moment. This does not include any contemplated changes to the legislation. This would be the program as it exists today. So if any of that were to pass, there would obviously be material changes. And then the second line from the bottom, we discussed a little bit yesterday, statistical reval. The expense side, about 59,000, and we expect that the state will reimburse us approximately 25,000 of that.
Great.
And then the final revenue component, page 7, reserves and transfers in. The first line there from BILT, this is the land trust reimbursing the town for debt service, and that's an exact one-for-one reimbursement. The second line there, reserve for debt service, that actually is 2 items. We have 2 debt service reserve funds, one related to Island Light and Power, and the second related to a fire engine refund that we received last year. So for the remaining life of both of those bonds, we will draw down a fixed amount from the reserve to offset some of that debt service expense.
Any questions?
Anything I missed, Mona?
Mona, you up? We're moving on to community support. You want one of these? Would it be helpful? I know you have 20 million pages over there. You want a copy? You good?
Thank you. All right. So we're going to jump a little bit in the narrative to page 12. That's going to be page 22 in the budget document. So we'll start with the medical center. So their original request was 405,000, and that is what they're being recommended, level funded from the current fiscal year 25 budget.
Are Tom and Allison gonna speak now, or I just saw them up there on the Zoom. Welcome, Tom. Welcome, Allison.
Hi, thank you very much.
Tom, we haven't had a chance to do it publicly, but before you start, I think we'd all like to say thank you and wish you well. You did a wonderful job for a substantial number of years. There have been a lot of changes that I think have been valuable and driven by you and Allison, and I just really appreciate what you've done for our community.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's been quite an experience from starting with COVID and ending with new construction. So never a dull moment. All right. So I'm not sure what you're seeing there. Are you seeing a set of slides that we submitted?
No, we're not.
So I'll speak to a narrative, and
Yeah,
it's probably
that's
in your
great.
packets.
Yes.
Okay. So we submitted our budget as requested and customary, but some of the areas that we just want to highlight and happy to answer questions. The medical visits from 2021 through 2024 have increased by 3%, which is great. We've seen some steady improvement even despite construction. We ended up on a higher note in 24 despite 23. So we appreciate all the efforts of our staff as well as the patience of the community to get us through that process. The visit data is actually very striking. So one of the things that we worked hard on is how do we both achieve, excuse me, being a primary care office that can meet the same day needs of the island. So we restructured our daily schedule to accommodate for what we saw in the data in the previous couple of years. And so the urgent cares are down, trauma visits are slightly decreased, but our same day visits are substantially up. We saw over 1,330 same day visits in 2024, which means you called that day, you were seen that day. And I think that really shows a commitment of the office to meet the tourist needs as well as what we would naturally want to meet the needs of our patients that are part of the practice all the time. 14% increase in our overall physicals in 24 compared to 23. I want to emphasize this point is when your wellness visits are up, it means your high value visits are up. And your high value visits are your conduit into the value-based payment systems, which have begun in 2025. This is where there is upside and downside risk of monies at the payer levels, Blue Cross, United, Neighborhood, etc., Medicare. The only way for BIHS to take advantage of that is be part of an accountable care organization, which we established with several years ago. And as a reciprocal, your day-to-day fee-for-service, which is the customary way medical care gets reimbursed in this country, will be funded less and less and less. So if there is any movement, in my opinion, towards more of an urgent care look to the health center, it's not only going to hurt the year-round families that enjoy the access and convenience of the medical center, it will hurt the medical center even further financially than what challenges we already have, because the reimbursement on a fee-for-service urgent care is going to be less and less and less. Medicare has already made very clear statements that by 2030, all of Medicare will be in some type of value-based payment, and about 60% of it is now. Many people know it as Medicare Advantage. So the regular Medicare, red, white, and blue will likely be non-existent by 2030. And all the commercial payers have followed suit. So Blue Cross, United, Neighborhood, all the ones that we would be participating in, those are the big ones in the state, are all pushing us towards better quality care at a lower cost, and you can share in those cost savings. You do not share in that if you look more like an urgent care. I'll happy to stop there, take any questions before I go forward with some of our 2025 plans.
Any questions for Dr. Workman? Go ahead, Tom and Allison.
Excellent. So Allison, once you take us away with looking forward to 2025 and 2026.
Yeah, first of all, hi, thanks for having us. Great to see you guys. 2025 for us is going to be a lot of changes and a lot of kind of new plans. So we'll be welcoming a new provider, obviously, as Dr. Workup exits, and we'll be welcoming a new CEO. And we're excited about that. And we're excited about new leadership. We obviously have a beautiful brand new building that we're very excited about. We're expanding our services in that respect, particularly in the dental and the behavioral health area. And our new building allows us to do that in a way that makes patients comfortable and also gives them a lot of flexibility. We're also looking to provide more services for the community in the way that the community would like to receive them. And by that specifically, we mean bringing providers into homes for our community health at home program and looking to expand and enhance the hospice services that we provide. Additionally, Block Island is becoming more and more of a hotspot for people and providers who are interested in studying rural medicine. And so we continue to welcome many, many students in various areas of rural medicine, family medicine residents, emergency medicine residents, medical students, nurse practitioner students, and physician assistants. I think that's a really important thing for what we can provide, both because I think it could be a future revenue source for BIHS, but also because it allows us to contribute to the rural health landscape and kind of prepare other providers for rural practice, which I think is aligned with our values and is a great experience for our students and for our community.
To expand on something Allison said, definitely want the council to be aware that I think between the partnerships we've had with Brown Health and the other students that we have and residents, we have actually received resources for the ability to teach, which is not a usual and customary process with other entities that teach and provide clinical experiences for their students. So I think we're pretty proud of that. So we're hoping to continue to generate more revenue and actually be a continuing medical education spot, which is I think what Allison's referring to, which is where you actually pay to come and experience certain things on the island in a rural-based practice. But we are already receiving some revenue, and we'd like to continue to grow that aspect because we really do firmly believe that we have a tangible product to sell, and we know there's a real desire out there.
Are you finished, Allison?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Dr. Workup or Allison? I would just say I really appreciate the data and the packet that you provide to us. It's immensely helpful. I've pointed to it when others have asked about kind of what's helpful to the council. Those kind of numbers and that kind of data are really very helpful. So thank you. More questions?
I think also, I just want to acknowledge the board, their work that they did, the fundraising. I mean, the building's beautiful. There's a lot of work that went into it. Never mind building it, but before you built it, there was a lot of fundraising and so forth. I'm very fortunate, and I just want to acknowledge all of their efforts.
I'll pass that along. Thank you.
I think you might run into someone.
Go ahead, Mona. Tom and Allison, thank you so much, as always.
Thank you.
All right, the Block Island Volunteer Fire and Rescue Department. Their request is for $294,000 $294,900. And what we ended up doing is level funding them compared to fiscal year 25 at $289,500 with the addition of 2,800 for an EMS medical director, which is that's now a requirement of the Department of Health, or it's to fulfill a requirement of the Department of Health. And maybe there's someone here who can fill us in a little more about that.
Sure. I'll start, and then if somebody else wants to jump in. So we did have a subsequent request from the rescue squad after their budget was submitted. The estimate that they currently have is for $2,800 annually for a medical director that is dedicated to the rescue squad. And this will facilitate a more direct and hopefully smoother transition between rescue squad on scene and then ultimate transition to of a patient up to the medical center by providing that dedicated medical control, including training, post-run review, and other things. It's something the rescue squad seems quite excited about, the opportunity to have that dedicated resource that they can draw on and learn from and improve their operations internally. So we did add that request to the level of funding that had previously been appropriated.
And I believe that's a requirement also that they have to have. It's not
Yes.
something, if you're required to have that, through the medical center, whatever it might be. Correct, Mike? No, I'm saying, but it's a requirement that you have, so this isn't, right. Right.
Great.
The other element, which is a separate line related to fire and rescue, is the alarm reimbursements. And so this is for fire volunteers who are responding to alarm calls. You can see the requested and recommended amounts there. The 25,000, I believe, is consistent with the current year, although the total calls that were responded to in the current year totaled $30,000. The hope is that as part of the transition of the alarm system, we may be able to mitigate some of those false calls. So we've left the funding at 25,000 with the expectation that those things come into better alignment. The total run calls that I got? Yeah, the request was for the appropriated amount, but the detail that I had behind it totaled $30,000, which I think is important for everybody to know, that the actual response level was higher than the authorized amount.
Thank you. That raises something I was going to ask yesterday and forgot. Could you and Tom and Mike or whomever, I know that Tom has done a lot of work on this. I think it would be helpful just to have an item at some point sort of describing what the new system is. Mostly because I'm curious and would love to understand it, and my bet is others are as well. Not just here, but in the community, because I know it's been, first of all, it's been a project that has taken up a lot of resources and has seems like is going so well, and we don't celebrate that enough, in my opinion. So
A lot of people have put in a lot of time and
Yeah.
effort and done great work. So yes, I think we'd be happy to talk about it.
So I wonder too, and maybe this is something to discuss later, but with the new alarm system, could we move towards charging people who are repeat offenders? You know, the alarms that consistently go off. I live with 2 radios in my house. I hear them all.
That
And
is certainly
There's a lot
the,
of repeat offenders who, if they were to fix their system or make some adjustment at their own, physical location, we wouldn't have guys getting out of bed so often.
that's certainly the expectation. The current ordinance allows for that, although we've been reluctant to enforce it because it's a system error as much as an end user error, but tightening that loop will make it more clear when there's an end user problem that isn't being appropriately addressed. At the same time, we will also review the ordinance to see if there's language changes we need to implement that in a better way.
And maybe at the same time that we have what Keith is talking about, a general overview of the thing, we can also kind of subtly remind people that this ordinance is going to go into effect now.
Yeah, until we have a timeline for full implementation, we won't go there, but it's on the horizon.
Any other questions about the fire department rescue squad?
Mike, can you, did the fire department institute the billing for rescue services last year?
Thank you, Mike. Turn the green light on.
Button, so the green light.
Okay, there we go.
Now that you've turned
They
40,
did not
glasses.
institute the billing for rescue because the company we were working with refused to take us on. They probably from their financial point of view, because they get 6% of what we bill out, what they're allowed to bill out. And for 6%, it's one number if you're bringing people to a hospital. It's a different number for an urgent care center, which is a problem. So basically, the transportation to the medical center isn't covered. It would be from the medical center to the airport or any final ferry off to a hospital. So
Thanks.
to answer your question, it's never been.
So I guess the reason Dr. Workups left the meeting, but I thought under the new classification of the medical center, that may have changed.
I just want to piggyback on what he said. I just want to piggyback on what Mike said. We went to 3 different companies to try and get a billing for service, and we were turned down by all 3 for the same reasons. So, yeah, we have stopped trying to pursue that.
Allison, can we follow up with you on that? Because I'm just curious about whether the rural health designation provides any opportunity there.
We can certainly look into it. To my knowledge, it's there, or being a rural health center is not the same as being an emergency room. So that's
Right.
probably what they're talking about when they're thinking about transport.
But it just occurred to me when Tristan was asking that question that we can't be the only place in America with where the first stage is a wonderful high touch place, but doesn't meet the definition of an emergency room.
Right. Yeah, I'm happy to look into that and get back to you guys if that would be helpful.
Great. Yes, it would be very helpful. I think for everybody. Thank you.
Moving on.
Yes, please, Mona.
All right. So next we have the visitor center. There's a group that has been working for quite a while on looking at a collaborative way to manage the chamber or the visitor center. And so that has been the town staff, the tourism council, and then members of the chamber board. And what they submitted in their budget request was called their go forward proposal. And it was detailed, but what you see here is a portion, the town's contribution to that. And so what we have is 25,000 going towards, in response to that request. But then also you can see in prior years, we funded the chamber about 10,000. Sorry, I keep referring to it as the chamber, the visitor center. And so that's where you get our total of 35,000. That 10,000 that we have seen in prior years, that is offset by the Chamber of Commerce rent that Bill was asking about, that you see over on the other town fees and income on page 5. And I'm sure that somebody is here maybe to speak about the chamber's request. No?
So you're welcome to if you want to add anything. Sharon, Julie is here as well, and Dave.
Jess. Nice one.
And so we've been meeting pretty regularly as a collaboration of the Tourism Council, the Chamber Board, and the town to shift the landscape around the visitor center. And I think what you've seen in the proposal before you is representative of a very different partnership than existed previously, both a financial one where things are pretty evenly split and a change in sort of the responsibilities and shared effort. Underlying a lot of that is the work that Sharon and the chamber have done to separate expenses, which is something that hadn't really been done in a hard way previously. So they've been able to go back through historical numbers and then from January 1st of this year forward to really carve the visitor center and the chamber and allocate those in a much more clear way that they've shared with tourism and with the town. So there's a comfort level that I can bring to you about what those costs are and how we expect the operation to run going forward. The key part being that three-way partnership and the communication and the accountability that I think was much needed and has been working really well so far. Again, if any of you want to speak, I'm happy to yield the floor or take questions. But this is not the same funding proposal that you've seen in the past.
Is the pie the same and it's divided differently?
The pie wasn't as clearly defined before.
Yeah.
It was an abstract notion of we should provide this service. We didn't know who we were. We didn't really know what the service was, and we couldn't tell you how much it cost.
Right.
So, and
But
so-
other than
that, the intention was there. And so now we've taken that intention that the chamber has sort of carried for quite some time and codified it in a different way. That ongoing conversation about what should those services be, I think represents the three different organizations, and we continue to talk about what should a visitor center for Block Island do. As I said, we're pinning down what those costs are and trying to make sure that we're holding each other to that plan.
So I'm just having a hard time following it.
Yeah.
The 35,000 is what we will put in,
Yes.
and then how much will the other two entities put in?
So go for it if you've got it off the top of your head.
Hi, Sharon. Make sure the mic is on.
It's green, is that?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Hi, my name is Sharon Tavilla, and I am on the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce, and I've been working with Julie and Dave and Christina on this. So right now, what I'm asking the Tourism Council to contribute 31,400 and change. Over the last few years, they've been contributing about 15,000. I've asked for the 25,000 and then the 10,000 rent from the town, and the chamber will contribute 34,200 towards salary, and then another $9,000 towards the operating expenses of the building. So I've looked at the budget. I've also been cleaning up the budget, trying to eliminate any unnecessary expenses. Costs about $105,000 a year to run the visitor center. It's open 256 hours a year, and it's staffed because there's about 3 people in the summer, about 3,900 hours in the summer. So right now, we've just been getting 15,000 from the Tourism Council towards that staffing to pay the staff. And then the chamber has been covering all the rest of the expenses. We offset with the 10,000, and then there's about, give or take, there's been about 15,000 in token revenue from the lockers. That has steadily declined because every time the wonderful person who rented the locker loses a key, we lose a locker. They're so old, you can't recover it. So that is an average over the last few years that has steadily declined. So we're asking just mostly this is to cover about 40% of the operating cost of the building, which is about $15,000, and then the share in the cost of the visitor center staff. We will continue to hire and train those tourist ambassadors in the summer. We've been staffing the winter hours. We stay open from about 10 to 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and the chamber has just been covering those hours over the many years. I mean, just today alone, we had about 25 people came in off the ferries, and you know, I'm from Idaho. Literally, I'm from Idaho, Big Bear Lake, and I wanted to see what Block Island was. I have no idea what to do in 2 hours. I'm on your island. So I think it's a pretty equitable division. I don't think it's anything excessive. And what I've also asked, in talking with Julie and Dave, is to separate the cost into 2 payments, one at the beginning of the year to start to fund the salaries, and then keeping an eye, doing quarterly reporting to the same group, keeping an eye on the expenses and adjusting if it goes down. Questions?
Are there any plans to replace the lockers? I know they generate a lot of revenue.
So, do you want me to take that? My understanding is the building is going to be rebuilt. And so we have not done anything to do that. And in fact, what I have been working on this week, big thanks to the maintenance department who came and took out big ugly desks that were there. We're actually trying to open up as best we can without spending any money. We're trying to open up the space. We have a couple big problems in the summer. There's no shade there at all. We have people that get overheated, elderly, people with young kids. So we're trying to just reconfigure the space a little bit, use what we have. We've thrown out a ton of trash. We're going to continue to do that over the next few days to allow people to come in. We don't really see that we should replace the lockers if the building is scheduled to be rebuilt in the next year or so. If that's not true, it would make a lot of sense because they do generate a significant amount of money. But that locker room I was in there yesterday and I should get hazmat pay for the the mouse poop in the storage room is just
Sure.
disgusting.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Sorry. Any other questions?
Amy,
Go
I'll just, in the restrooms, we deal with that separately, correct? The cleaning and so forth?
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sort of, yeah.
We do our best.
Yeah,
But it's not part of these funds?
It is not part of this conversation.
no,
Good,
it's
thank
not.
you.
Good, thank you.
So this is obviously not on the appropriation this year, but do we feel like we're on a path? Are people feeling like we're,
I feel like we're on a path, but I'll let anybody else pop in.
A smooth path?
Yes.
you guys are going to be Nobel laureates?
It's actually been a fun group,
Yeah.
an exciting one and a forward-looking one. So
The
That feels
reason
good.
I asked that question about the path is, you know, what Sharon just said about potential reconstruction, you know, that I assume that's the next phase. Is that a safe assumption or? you
they're
know,
they're
how's that?
parallel paths.
Parallel?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
They don't, one is not contingent upon the other. And
Yep.
so certainly having conversations about about how a new building would function is very contingent upon having a functioning visitor center that we can all feel is supported over the long term.
Right.
So to that
Terrific.
extent, yes, very
Thank
much
you.
so.
Thank you. Any other questions? Of course you may. How are you tonight, Julie? Good.
I just want to say publicly, thank you to Sharon, because she has done so much work, and the reason we're at this place is because of her. So I really do appreciate your efforts. So.
Nice job.
All right.
That's great stuff.
All right, let's move to the Lock Island Early Learning Center. So the requested amount was $154,735. And what we've recommended is level funding at $141,892. Hi, Julie.
And if I can just interject before we move specifically to the Early Learning Center, you've heard Mona say on each of these major lines that we're essentially level funding the community support lines. You know, I don't want to say it's deliberately consistent across the three, but that's essentially the program that we put in place.
Great. Hey, Julie.
Julie Conant. Good evening. So I'm used to the level funding across the board. Thank you. Last year, we lost 5,900 in funding. And oddly enough, this year, we're asking for essentially twice that. So to make up for last year and then this year, I usually prepare a pretty tight budget. We did see some increases mostly in insurance across the board, 4 different insurances. One is for a new van that we got from the RUSA Fund via a grant. Thank you very much to the RUSA Fund and all the efforts there. We do have to pay our own insurance that used to be covered by the town because I think we were part of the town fleet and we are not allowed to do that anymore. So there's an item there about $2,000, $2,100 also in insurance. So mostly our expenses went up in the insurance field, and I really do try to keep everything to the minimum. I think year over year, we're pretty consistent. We have, right now we have one employee in the toddler room part-time, so that's about 23 hours a week. Tracy and I full-time. And then in camp, We are starting off with that staff. If we can add another person, that would mean we could add probably 4 or 5 more children to the camp program. So we're hoping to get a return employee from last year so we can have another, like I said, 4 or 5 kids served through the camp. As far as our budget going forward, I do think we're pretty close. Like I said, we were looking for the additional $12,000 because I feel like we felt the loss from last year and we're going to feel it again this year.
Any questions?
So I have a question. What's the rate per hour to send a child to the center?
So right now, so this year that we're in right now, it's based on $12 an hour. Let's say it's based on $12. That's, Molly, that's for a year-round 10-month commitment. So what we do is we hand out different commitments. Over the years, we've learned that we needed a seasonal provision as well as a year-round, well, we say year-round, but 10 months, so the school year. So those that commit for the school year, who are typically those who live here year-round, they get the best rate, which is the 12, based on $12 an hour. The seasonal folks who might stay late in the fall, come early in the spring, we have a program for them, and it basically tracks at about $3 an hour more than whatever the other one is. We do have a built-in raise of 50 cents per hour, just sort of cost of living raise, and we feel like we should continue that going forward. So right now, it's 12, and in the fall for the next start of the school year, it would be 12, based on $12.50. And then the other one would go up $3 as well, so that'd be $15.50.
And that's how long has that been the price?
The 12, we increased, we did our 25-cent increase, automatic increase for several years. And we had a tuition increase last year of $2 an hour. So it went from, well, it's about $1.75 an hour, sorry. It went from $10.25 to $12 at the beginning of the school year.
Because of the to cover the $6,000?
Yes, essentially to cover the
Is that what that
6,000.
is? Is that how that would equate roughly?
Yeah, it's roughly, yes. And we do feel, again, it's hard to compare Block Island to anywhere else, but we do feel like our rates, and we acknowledge and thank the town for supporting us, that we can keep the rates. We again are in a partnership with the town. It was a common mission to keep rates low and provide, childcare at a significant discount. And I do think industry standard wise, the rates are very good, but I do get feedback from families, and the price of everything has gone up. So they are, they kind of struggle a little bit with the $2 increase, but I think now we're going to pace it a little bit slower, and I think that will suffice. So.
But in asking the town for $12,000, did the $2 an hour increase not make up for the funding that was cut last year? And I want to preface by saying the reason we cut that is that from the paperwork from the budget that you guys gave us last year, you were asking us to pay for more than 50% of your operating costs,
Right.
which seemed inequitable compared to the other community support.
Right. So,
lines.
I'm glad you brought that up. So when you asked me that question last year, I wasn't even sure whether I answered it properly, but it did make me think. So if we're comparing the community support entities, I think, and this is a big nut of it, we do provide our own building, and I don't know what you provide for anybody, but I feel like you provide the medical center to the medical center, and the library to the library, and the fire to rescue and fire to them. Again, I don't know that to be dead true, but we do provide our own building. So that 32,000, which is rent and utilities, maybe we're not comparing apples to apples when you ask that question. So I'm glad you brought it up. And I didn't think of it really till after the fact, but I think if you added that back in, we would be less than 50%. So I think we should get, I think it should be considered for sure that we're covering that on our own, I guess.
And so both your financial report from this year and the one from the previous year says that you made exactly $20,000 fundraising.
So again, we projected that. So that's a projection. So what you're looking at is my projection. So this year, I believe, is 18,009 and change. So we're hoping to make 20, and we came in just under that. And this year, I think we'll hit the 20, if not go over. I think they did a great job. Parents did a great job last year fundraising. And it actually, Molly, it actually goes over 2 fiscal years. So the first 4,900 was actually in last fiscal year, and then the rest of it was in this fiscal year. And it's like the same parents in that school year, so that sometimes gets a little funny. But the parents did a great job, and we did 3 successful fundraisers, and they worked hard at that.
Okay, so I guess I didn't realize that we were just looking at projected, not projected and actual, right?
Yes, correct.
So would you say that most of your expenses and income played out the way that you projected them to be?
Yeah, I think so. We can't, yeah, so we only have 4 income lines, really. We have support from the town, we have our tuition, we have fundraising, and then we have some donations. So I would say it did come in. I think our donations came in at 5,500. It's very close to the projections.
And by tuition, you have it listed as total program, is that?
Yes,
tuition?
exactly. Sorry, yes, that's how the QuickBooks has it, yes. So that would be all the programs. That would be camp and toddler program, which we obviously keep separately just for our own records, and then preschool.
So Julie, would it be possible to get a breakdown of that number? In the categories you just listed
The breakdown like of the program?
of the program? like
Yes.
The tuition for the programs, for the
Yes.
camps. and
So,
preschool.
yes, camp versus preschool versus toddler. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
That'd be helpful.
Yep, sure. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I wanted to start with those larger outside organizations who had sent in their requests. And we're just going to start from the top and look at some of the other line items that we're funding. So the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, that is essentially a membership fee that's placed there. They offer a lot of beneficial services to the town and its employees. Domestic Violence Center of South County. You can see that they requested 3,500 and what is recommended is 1,000. If you look at the actuals for fiscal year 24, you'll see that that is what we provided for that year as well.
Would be really helpful to get a sense, even confidentially, of what I don't know how you calculate the value of particular contributions, whether it is the number of people from the zip code who, avail themselves of service, but it's really hard if you don't know that.
And on the Domestic Violence Center in
Yeah.
particular, the one that I weight the most is input from both our police chief
That's
and our human
Police
services
Chief and Human
director,
Services, exactly.
who have anecdotally expressed their support for this program
Right.
and the way that they use it as a resource.
Okay.
So-
Very helpful. We didn't hear the same about Tri-County last. Just making sure I heard that right.
I'll go down to the Coast Guard facility. That's essentially going to be your maintenance costs of the Coast Guard station. Could be utilities, just general maintenance. So removing any anomalies that we see from the year-end fiscal year 24. And then looking at the 3-year average, we decided an appropriate number would be 30,000 or sorry, 28,000, close to the 3-year average for to maintain that building. There's money over on the capital budget side for the larger scale projects. I believe it's 100,000. We'll get to that.
That's what I was wondering. I mean, it certainly looks like it needs a lot more than $30,000 for the.
Yeah, this is just
This is-
utility.
keeps the
This is,
light.
you
Just the
know,
owner's
Yeah,
clue.
utilities, yeah. mowing, that kind of thing. Yeah, anything that's just a general monthly maintenance. And then we have, okay, so you see the Senior Advisory Committee there, Senior Citizens Advisory, and that, as we talked about yesterday, has moved over to the Human Services Department and kind of melted into that budget. And then finally, the mini grant program, it was added to the budget. It was such a success, and the community members seemed to like it, and we thought we'd like to keep this in the budget for consideration for future years. We weren't able to fund it this year, at least in the initial budget that we're presenting here.
On that, I'd like to, I'm hoping that, I know it's gonna be tight, that we can get some data from, how the programs went, and as we go through this, maybe,
I apologize. Allison did pull together a summary of what she has so far, and
Sure.
I meant to provide it to the council and I didn't.
Yeah,
But so we'll get that out next
as we
week.
get down and we move
Yep.
around, and
Yes.
we may not
Yeah.
get to 20,000, but, the feedback that we're hearing, that it was a success. So I think those numbers, and so when we do some juggling.
Yep. I'll get
we
that
can
to you.
get
Yes.
reminded to that.
Someplace we
Yeah,
can
absolutely,
put some
Bill.
money as we go along.
I think it was a great idea, and it's part of our responsibility to figure that stuff out. All right,
All right,
capital tax.
capital tax. Page 13 of narrative, page 24 of the budget document. So the,
Hey, Mona, can I interrupt for a second because I'm slow on the uptake on this, but to be clear, capital tax items are capital improvements that are paid for out of the current appropriated budget. Right?
out of the budget, we're,
Yes.
yes, going over your right here, yes.
It's a bit of a term of art that I think is not widely understood. So I just wanted to offer that definition before we got into it.
Right, right, with the exception of those items that will be funded through a bond.
Right.
Those
Yes.
larger
Yep.
items.
Right, so that 4% that we do doesn't apply to the bonded capital items, is that correct,
It's a
Amy?
good question.
I'm going to repackage your question a little.
Please do.
When the debt service for a bonded item comes online, our first step is to include it within the 4%. If that debt service is material enough that it qualifies under the exception criteria, we can pursue a tax increase above 4% for that debt service only. That,
Yes, so like last year we did that.
yes.
It's a good
Right.
example of an item it might be.
Yep.
But in general, this here is within
The capital tax page in the capital and operating budget is within the 4%.
thank you.
And do we still follow, there was an ordinance where the capital items started with planning so that the numbers that we see are kind of more specific than just general.
Yes, we do have an ordinance that was revised a few years ago. You should also have in your packet the capital plan. So
Yeah.
the multi-year plan that is submitted to the planning board in December, and they determine that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan in all of its elements. So you should have the capital plan, which then is distilled down into the capital tax page. Current year is not going to incorporate everything in the capital plan because we can't afford everything.
No problem, no problem at all. All right, so the capital plan originally, removing those items that were going to be or would need to be funded through a bond, would be the $980,000. That was the original capital plan. We did have to make some adjustments to what was recommended. And so what we have funded here is the resurfacing or repairs to the basketball and tennis courts at the Ball O'Brien Park. And I kind of packaged that up and added a couple other little maintenance items that the company can take care of at the same time, such as fence repair. Harbor's utilities, the state mandated some fire suppression on one of the docks, the west dock. And so that will cover that. And then also we're continuing to replace the electric pedestals to offer the 50 amp service in addition to the 30 amp. And we have seen an increase in our revenue for that service as well. So that helps offset some of this cost. Coast Guard Station, as we just discussed, so this is more your large projects, and it's just, looks like we're going to work on the south exterior wall this year. And yeah, we're looking at reviewing the building in its entirety for these, just kind of the larger scale needs. And getting the feedback from a structural engineer on that.
So part of the 100 will be retaining a structural engineer to look at that.
That is being done in the current year budget,
Okay.
but until we have that report,
Right.
it's a little challenging to define the
Sure.
scope of next year's project or what comes subsequently. At minimum, sort of best case scenario, the report says, you know, you don't have any material structural issues and therefore go forth and one of the plans is tackle each floor 1 year at a time with cosmetic functional renovations. If that report comes back and says you have major structural issues, we're going to have to regroup here and decide how to proceed. So best case scenario, we can continue with doing the work to make it habitable and livable. And again, our plan is one floor a year over 3 years. But if the number's big, then we have to come back and $100,000 isn't going to solve anything. So.
Right.
So this last year, there was a 100,000, 150,000 budgeted. So that's, we're talking for the exterior wall part we're talking about, or are we talking about anything inside? When we're saying by floor?
Interior.
Okay.
Yep.
So this was when we were talking about the peel and paint and all of that.
Yeah,
everything, that would include that. That would include that by floor, right? So this 150 that we had allocated for 2025, right?
Not everything
was going to be done with that.
Not everything.
Okay.
Yes. Right now we're focusing on making it weather tight. The south wall is leaking like a sieve, so that's all the windows are getting reset and it's going to get reshingled. At the same time, that's one contractor. At the same time, we have another contractor grinding and repainting the other 3 walls. And by the time they get around to the 4th wall, it'll be shingled with kiln dried shingles, so it'll be paintable the same year they were put up.
All exterior, right?
All exterior.
Okay.
In 26 budget, which is what you're looking at, is attacking the interior. Even this year, we're putting a lot of the windows never got trimmed 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're doing that. We have an issue that we really haven't got our arms around yet. In the hallways are all those 8x8 tiles. And if you're in the facility business, you know what that means. They're all asbestos. And so we're going to have to address that in the fall after this current season.
So last year we had the issue at when we were talking about where the summer kids were living, there's paint peeling and so forth. Has any of that been able to be addressed for the incoming people that will be this summer?
Only in the worst cases.
Okay.
I'd say 10 to 15% of it will be handled. The kitchens especially is getting new upper and lower cabinets and a new skin on the interior walls because that was really bad.
It was presented to us, it
Right
was
now.
pretty dire.
It is
That
dire.
it didn't, and we don't want to put people back into that. So I just was hoping,
That's being done this spring.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's in the 25 budget.
thank you.
Now that it is spring and it's, more tolerable for everybody, I do think. It would be great to do, to notice a time when everybody from the council, those who are interested, can go and do a walkthrough with you, a walk around.
Sure, it's gonna be pretty intense for the next 3 weeks.
That's
probably,
fine.
And then,
But,
then that would.
but
be
I
a good
just
time.
think,
And you'll
it's-
see why the floor to floor makes sense. Something that Amy and I haven't
I-
talked much about is the old, I think Dave Houseman already left, but the electrical system is from the 30s. The plumbing system is from 35. They
Yeah.
both, top to bottom needs new mechanical systems, and then we can approach the horsehair plaster and all that. So,
I guess part of my advocacy for this is that the walkthrough was very eye-opening for me.
yeah, and we have a lot of new
You know.
people, so
Yeah.
we should do that.
And that's my concern about,
Yes.
about where we're putting people. We have an obligation, as a, as the landlord, where we're putting people for the summer. So when they were talking about there was paint falling and so forth. I just want to make sure we get, that addressed. That's all.
Yes. And just because you're talking about peeling paint, which makes me anxious, we
Yeah.
did go through lead analysis for that whole building so that we are confident that it is safe and habitable for our tenants.
And
do-
on the Ball O'Brien tennis court, does that also include the kids, the playground, the structures as well? Is it the whole property or is it just the things listed, fencing? Okay, what's it say? Fencing, basketball court, and
Yeah, it's mainly just the surfaces of the basketball court and the tennis courts.
so is that a contract or is that DPW?
It is-
Contract?
Yes.
And what specialty is it? Is it more than paint?
Oh, it's it's like a resurfacing, right? A whole
I mean, it's a concrete slab.
It's, well, the Dave's asked me to help him. Dave's asked me to help him on the surfacing of the skateboard park and all that. That's an appliance service. But for basketball and tennis court, I believe it's just a spray on surface. I mean, could we do it?
Okay, is there anything with the kids structure? Is there any maintenance plan for that?
There is, but I think that's in his budget, is some of those springy things, kids ride on, like need new springs, and stuff like that, but I think that's.
Yeah, that's more incidental. So ongoing maintenance. I don't think there's a plan to wholesale replace some of the larger kid structures. It's
General
just
maintenance.
repair and maintenance.
Thank you.
And I hope Dave, and I'm sure he will, when he redoes those tennis courts, have it set up so he can do the line for the pickleball. I'm sure that'd be
Yes.
such a great.
And for the Coast Guard facility, what about the motor pool? Is that still used by the state police?
It is, yep.
And is any of this money going to that, or is this?
No, we are
solely
focused back on the station.
On the
and
station?
Not at the motor pool. Things are stable there.
And when you talk about starting to renovate floor by floor, is that because there's been a decision made that it would just stay as housing, or has there been any general conversation about?
The direction that we've heard from I would say councils collectively over the last few years, and the direction we're headed is that is housing, which is a valuable asset of the
Right.
town. And
Yeah.
rather than not taking action for the thing that might come later, it's time to commit to
Do
that
something to
being
fix it
housing
up
and
the way
making
it is.
appropriate for our
I think that's
employees.
fair.
Right,
Yeah.
so we're going to focus on
That's what
rooms
we're
and
doing.
bathrooms.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, this may or may not be the place for it, but since Tristan raised it, going to the playground with little kids, I think we need to figure out how we over time upgrade some of that playground equipment, because some of it's pretty bad. Bad is, bad's probably it, but it's The beautiful thing about it is that it's used almost every time I drive by it. So it's, you know, if you go by, counting, little and sometimes big feet, it's a highly desirable asset of the town. And I don't know, I wasn't, involved when that was all built. I think it was a while ago now, as playground equipment goes in the
Well,
environment.
Tig and Mason were 3.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
that's when it was put in.
So,
Yeah.
you know, easy for me to say, but it seems like that could be a community priority. Right, Granddad?
And can we get somebody to take a look at that, just overall what's there and the status of what, so we have an idea of what we're talking about? Cause yeah, it's been over 20 years.
All right. Moving down the list, so we have the harbors, New Harbor dredging, that's the $50,000. The project in its entirety will likely cost much more than that, over 100,000 or so. So this is just the phase 1 of that project. It's going to be the surveying, the planning, applications, just the first half. I don't expect there'll be any execution for this year.
Is that the area behind Deadeye's?
Yeah.
Great.
I think Keith, you'll agree with me since we go through it quite a bit. That's really, you know, that's really filling in a lot in there.
It really is.
Between the air going up through pains. I mean, there's times where you get
Just
3 or 4, you know.
And I will say that's a 2-year project, not because of the funding, meaning we couldn't accomplish it faster if we had all the money. It's going to take us that long to get through the regulatory
permitted.
permitting. So
Yeah,
And is
absolutely.
there any time to, I know when the Army Corps sometimes does the channels to dovetail on that for, and I don't know if they'll be scheduling for New Harbor, the entrances and so forth. So I don't know what that lines up.
I know Kate's always on top of that when there's an opportunity to get a big boat to move some sand.
Yeah, she does a good job of saying, while you're here.
And is there a seasonal restriction on when that dredging can take place on top of permitting and all?
I don't think we know the answer to that because it hasn't been done in that area for so long.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Oh. Highways, line 5603, highways mower vehicle. That is going to be originally in the fiscal year 25 plan, we had 2 sets of, what is it, a plow and a flail? Is it sander? Okay. 2 pieces of equipment that Mike needed. We're going to 2 sets of it for the trucks. And it ended up being a lot more expensive when we went to order it this year. So this is going to be the second set. That's what that 35,000 is.
Gotcha.
And that's why you didn't see it not in the original, 5-year capital improvement plan.
So we're doing it in 2 bites instead of 1. Okay.
Amy, is this separate from the one for the sidewalk? Or is this?
It is.
Okay.
This is separate.
All right. Recreation, we upgrade Heinz Field. This is kind of part of a larger regular maintenance cycle, but because of the cost, it comes over to the capital tax page. I'm just going to refresh the infield mix. And Dave Sniffen does a great job of taking care of that field on a regular basis.
And again, the reason, because it's 25,000 that it wouldn't be with the regular maintenance, is it because it's something that comes up periodically and not a routine, or?
This one's an example of something just on the border of, it's
It doesn't change anything.
It doesn't change anything, and it should start to live over in the operating side. But then we know it will spike it every 3 years.
We have got the Fred
Can we
Benson.
Sorry, Mona, can we back up to the highways department? So will we be going through this year without a piece of equipment for the sidewalks?
No, that's over on the snow clearing
It's on.
piece of equipment. That's over on the operating
Oh,
budget side. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Fred Benson Beach. And that's just some general maintenance on there, some replacement of the deck pieces. 'Cause they're rotting and in bad need of replacement. Some plumbing that's being required. Approximately 30,000. Move to the library. We have got the elevator replacement. That's in dire need of replacement, and that will be supplemented also by the Champlin Grant and the Friends of the Library who will also contribute. And originally in his request and Mr. Farwell's request, he did was looking to get the HVAC replaced. I think that's a much larger project than we were able to include in this budget this year. So right now it is unfunded.
Is it, do we know, is it functioning now? It just isn't in nurse through another year?
It's functioning, right? Yeah, it's just quirky at best.
So some time ago, it was determined to put in a fully automated system that is computer controlled and overseen by a company on mainland. Tony Proto is the engineer. Better. The he decided to no longer support that contract. It was a year thing. It wasn't anything bigger than that. And he said, I'm stepping away from that business. You're on your own. So we asked our town mechanical contractor, Oceanside, how they would present it and how they would address it. And they felt that there was in a city where you had people available and there was lots of technicians available, it might work. But out here, it was never the right decision. And in fact, when I first got here 5 years ago, I said, let's do it to this building too. And they said, it'll be $36,000 to just implement and then another 5 or 10 a year to maintain. And I said, oh, never mind. We can use thermostats and blowers. So the current plan is to go back to a much more analog system. When it's warm, the air conditioning comes on. When it's cold, the heat comes on. Instead of all these vanes and outside dampers and all this stuff happening. Less is more for us.
So are the guts okay, but the brains are?
Yes,
Gotcha.
good way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, that's such an impact on price. I'm just judging by the school and we're not talking about having to rip out the existing
No,
HVAC system.
No, so,
Gotcha.
just to be fully transparent, some things were disabled to make other things happen. We'll go back to the way it was designed. And that's the way it should have been maintained. I think there was.
Right. Gotcha. It's helpful, Tom. Thanks.
I would add that the library director did spend a fair amount of time also trying to find another contractor who would or could maintain the existing
Sure.
brains and was unsuccessful in getting anyone willing to serve Block Island. So.
And by switching to this, we'd be able to maybe jump on a contract like we have for the buildings. So we'll be more efficient in the long run anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
More predictable.
There's an additional item we included here over on the capital side that also won't be found in the original 5-year plan. And that is approximately 13,000 for a technology upgrade at the library. This is driven by requirements to upgrade their security standards.
This is a little unusual to have in the capital side, that's a small number. But if we remember that libraries are subject to maintenance of effort as a one-time cost, it fits better over here.
Gotcha.
Did I read something where the libraries in general were losing overall support from the technology side going
Yes.
forward too?
Yep.
So we have to.
All right. You'll see the Northlight, we do have a requested figure in there of 100,000, and we will discuss that more later, I believe. I don't know if we're talking about that tonight, the sunset next week. Okay, yes. So we'll put a pin in that. And then we've got 60,000 for the comprehensive community plan, which is going to be due in 26.
And is that for a consultant or?
That's something the council will talk about. Generally, last time around, Allison did most of that work. At least at the end, we started with somebody else. But how we want to select the right planner or planners to perform that work will be a council decision.
Okay.
But the idea is we're reserving $60,000 because we anticipate that's what the consultant cost would be roughly.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And I missed a line, the transfer station upgrade.
Right.
We've got that in the budget, in the recommended column under for $50,000. Originally recommended for 75, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe that'll be similar to the harbors, where maybe it's a larger scale project, and this is going to be a lot more focused on the planning side of it.
This is the planning side. It was originally slated in the 2025 budget and was one of those items that was removed at the end. And so we don't have planning capital to even conceptualize about what those long-term improvements might be.
Any further questions about the?
What will the product of that be? Just because we've had it. I feel like it's been,
We've had it
proposed.
proposed and never,
And not funded.
and never
That
funded.
was not, no one has been doing anything,
Yeah.
but I think a little refresh on, will we get a proposed traffic flow? Will we get an inventory of what new needs are?
I would
where the
expect a
buildings go,
combination
et cetera?
of a needs assessment, an evaluation, and what you could possibly do with the existing facilities. How much life do they have back in them? How can you reconfigure, if at all, the space to be more effective? What, if any, new technologies would be appropriate to introduce if the town wanted to pursue them? That includes, do you expand the composting pilot in a meaningful way? So I think all those things are on the table so that we can know where we want to make those investments. It's a big lot, but people don't realize just how little space is actually usable
Sure.
for the transfer station functions. And so there's a lot we're trying to fit in a small space.
Right.
And
Do you anticipate that would be with sort of retained consultants to do that?
my guess
What
is
kind
that
of- what
retained
kind of-
consultants
I mean, it's curious, like who does that kind of?
in combination with presumably Jim, Mike, Sean,
Yeah,
Tom.
right.
So our staff,
Gotcha.
our ongoing consultants, and some additional outside
Great.
assistance.
Right, and then we have the two items that we expect to be would be funded by bonds instead of tax dollars, and that would be Engine 4 and then the public safety complex. So both those items are in the original 5-year plan for capital improvements and not reflected here.
Right.
And I'm not, we'll talk about it more specifically when we get to the warrant, but I'm not sure that either of those is going to be ready for a warrant question
Sure.
in May.
Right.
Any further questions about the capital?
Oh, I thought that was I thought that
Well,
was
I was ready.
a prelude to a question.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna add, I know we have the building committee and they're in their process, and so it won't be then. But we do have some of that grant money, and we do have some money. So it's, by doing this, it's not that the new building is stalled by any means. We have funds to do what we need to do to keep it moving.
We do. And so, without speaking on behalf of the building committee, we are planning and moving ahead to get to a point where we can bring a reasonable set of design ideas and an accurate estimate to the voters. So, and we have the funding to do that.
And we did have that letter on the housing board about a bond. I mean, I just don't want to ignore it.
Right, yeah.
So maybe
That'll
next
be
week-
on Thursday.
Next week, yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Good.
2 million, I think was what they asked.
All right. Okay. That was everything. Debt services next week.
Do-
Have at it.
Good.
I wasn't sure whether,
Well, who,
Okay.
whoever that is.
Yeah.
I'll go. It'll be quick. Ready? The major element of the debt service page is the retirement, as I mentioned before, of that 2005 school bond, which frees up, I think, about 500,000 in capacity. So we actually have a net reduction in total debt service. The addition that you see there is the Thomas property and then road improvements. So we issued a $6 million bond in the fall. That was a $4 million ban related to the school.
Yep.
So that has a one-time debt service payment, $157,561. That's line 8040 under school. And then the other 2 million was $1 million for Thomas and $1 million for roads. So those are the new items. Those are offset by the 2005 bond coming off. In the back of the narrative, for those who are interested in more detail, there is a maturity schedule that shows you how the town's long-term debt does unwind over time.
It's very helpful.
Yeah.
All right.
Amy, just when whatever minimal COVID money was left over and it had to be allocated by December, is there anything that you folks allocated that is sitting out there for anything?
So the town committed everything by December 31st, as was required by the law. That was the purchase order for the generator, 150,000. We have now paid that bill in full. So we'll recognize that as revenue in the current year as well. We did the 32,000 of the mini grants. Again, that was committed and out the door by December 31st. And then the balance was related to dispatch and the Old Harbor bulkhead. So those we committed through a purchase order and are expending those funds now. So there's nothing uncommitted. We have gotten a more robust letter from the Treasury Department about the rigorous proceedings that they will be implementing to ensure compliance with all standards. So it sounds like it's going to be an area of attention and we should be prepared for that. And that's okay. We feel like we've met all the standards that we needed to.
And was the Old Harbor bulkhead, was that was the one for the barges?
It is. We were hoping to get design on that back soon enough so that we could incorporate a number into this budget. We don't have that. So it's not included, but that had been the intention and the work continues, but we don't have an estimate or a design yet.
Can we put that on an agenda to have a conversation about it?
About the bulkhead?
About the bulkhead, to allow the barges to come in for the amount of limited use that there is. Um,
Is there a particular question we can prepare for?
just what was the plan and what was it based on? If that's all right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Amy, is there any, we had to, allocate the money to secure the funding. Is there any, time that the money has to actually be spent? The sooner the better, obviously, but.
Yep,
is that-
The
they
end of
wanna close out-
2026.
That
The,
one?
the end of 2026.
Although everyone is saying whatever you've got, spend before they try to claw it
But
back.
like I said, the clawback language was pretty strong.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, you saw the public health clawbacks this week. They're pretty aggressive.
Yes.
Any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Feel free. You know, we have public hearings, but. Nobody? Mona, anything else?
Nothing else.
Mona, I would like to say that you did a wonderful job these
Thank
last
you
couple
very
of
much.
nights, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And your mastery of it is
Thanks.
terrific. Thank you. All right. Item 2. Yeah, I'll do 2 and 3. It's on a meeting. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Millie, did you hear that?
I'm gonna recuse for items 2 and 3.
All right, this item is discuss and act on a resolution seeking legislation to increase the Block Island landing fee. Been round and around on this. This hasn't been increased. When was it increased?
It has not been increased.
Or when did it go into effect?
1991.
Exactly.
1990, 91.
And I think supportable number is $1.75. How's that?
Can I take 2 steps back?
No. No, of course.
Last meeting, we ended with a discussion about numbers,
Yes.
and the council has a draft resolution. I have also had a sense from our legislators in the last week that they are anxious to have this in hand if they are expected to take action on it. So they are getting a little bit antsy in terms of the
Yeah.
timeframe. I also indicated that I had a meeting scheduled with Interstate. I did have that meeting, and I think it's important to share with the council what we discussed. And so that was with Josh Linda and Mike McElroy. Shirley joined me as well. And I guess I would start by saying they represented that they would generally be supportive of a reasonable increase in the landing fee. Although, of course, without waiving their position that they have constitutionality concerns, that aside. And we talked about what reasonable would be, and Mike had been through some similar calculations to what we had done here. And so we did talk about that. However, that general supportiveness is based on the history of the town and Interstate having been and continuing to be partners, as they use the phrase, standing shoulder to shoulder, in most instances, in most policy instances. And so that was how it was expressed to me. The town's neutral stance on the Rhode Island Fast Ferry motion to reconsider did not feel to them as they described it, like a partnership and like we were standing shoulder to shoulder as they had known us to in recent years. And so given that landscape, they are not inclined to be supportive of a landing fee increase at this time. And in fact, are inclined to exercise their right under the collection agreement for non-renewal if the town was not interested in reconsidering its position. I did forward to the council a copy of that collection agreement and that language that each party has to express a non-renewal intent by April 15th of any year. So that's the landscape that we're in right now. And as we consider any resolution to increase the landing fee, I think that's important information for the council to have. So it intertwines a little bit with the next item, but to
Yeah.
the extent that they're
So I'm just going to say my first feeling on this is that we generally are to have an annual meeting with representatives of interstate navigation, which has not happened this year. But it hasn't happened because interstate has postponed it. I believe we had an email from them that said they had a boat up a river and they needed to work on it and their time frame was pushed back and nobody could come over here to meet with us. And so, you know, I think that's great that you had a Zoom call with them. It sounds like they're being very intractable here. There's lots of other people here. Where are they? I mean, I'd like to see somebody from Interstate at one of our meetings if they're really this upset about this. Where are they? I don't know. That's my feeling about it. But I mean, I think I've expressed that at the other meetings too, that I find it very frustrating that they can't show up so that the public can talk to them about the schedule. And that meeting that we have with them every year is really so that the public can engage in questions that they have and the council too. But I think it's really important that the public gets to talk to them about whatever. So I don't know. I think it's on them to show up.
Can I just ask you, I thought, Amy, when you and I had a conversation a month or so ago, you said that that meeting had been requested in November of this year. Is that?
That is my understanding. I wasn't in the position to be asking for it before November. I don't know what conversations were had before I was on the scene.
And I think if we're going to talk about schedule, okay.
No, please,
Schedules
Nancy.
of things, it's got to be done like in July or August, because it always used to be the schedule's done by the time they have a meeting. So even requesting a meeting in November is too late.
So, right. Yeah, I mean, I know that there's always been this ongoing frustration that it doesn't get timed in a way that syncs with the schedule making. But separate and apart from that, leaving aside that I quite frankly am really offended that the approach that Interstate chose to take was one of threatening to not collect the landing fee. I had to say that, but leaving it aside, there's clearly, at least on Mike and Josh's part, apparently some anger there, and I'd love to hear from them. You know, I mean, if whenever we can schedule them to come and express their concerns and represent their position, I'm always happy to hear that. I'm not absent that inclined, frankly, to change where I've been on this, but I'm happy to hear.
Can I comment on that?
Please.
In fairness, when that discussion about the fast ferry came up, this council sat here and heard from Charlie Donato, and we never asked to have Interstate come in and give their side of the story either. I'm not.
We didn't
Ha-
ask Charlie and those guys either. I think they
He,
said,
he came
Yeah.
and it was put to us, do we want to talk to him? And this council said yes.
Yeah,
And
I
he
mean-
came in and talked to us.
and the same would have happened if the interstate people.
Well, Charlie had a different, and I have a different perspective on this because I lived through that discussion way back because we've been doing this now since 2008 or 9, and it started with Charlie's proposal to have a fast ferry come out of Quonset to Block Island only in the summertime. And he came to the council back then and said, but if you don't want it, I won't do it. And the council said, we don't want another ferry coming into the old harbor. And Charlie went ahead and did it. And because the PUC took the position that interstate was in competition and couldn't really, interstate also in there, had a limited role in objecting to the necessity issue. Only the town could argue that. And our solicitor at the time spent a lot of time, and there were a lot of hearings, and a lot of it boiled down to the fact that we had gone to great lengths to renew the lease on the red breakwater in the old harbor. And under the terms of that lease, only the town could agree to have someone build off of that red breakwater. And at the time, that was part of the conversation and the plan for the Donadio Fast Ferry. So they always had to contend with the town. The PUC agreed that they had met the requirement for necessity after a lengthy hearing, but they didn't have a dock. So from 2011 until 2024, every 2 years, they came back to the PUC asking for an extension because there was an appeal that was going through the courts. Once that appeal was resolved, they waited another year passed, and the PUC at that time said, well, okay, now you've had time. You don't have a dock, so we're not going to renew your certificate of necessity. That's what's a topic now, because they've gone back to the PUC saying, we want to revisit your pulling our certificate of necessity. And this is what, from 2013 to 2025, that many years later. And since the town had spent so much time, energy, and money in fighting it in the first place, I just unfortunately made the assumption that, of course, we would take that up again and put in an appearance in objection, since we had spent all those years objecting. And the council decided that they would not take any position. I still think.
Yeah, Nancy, sorry to interrupt you, but I don't think the town should be spending legal fees fighting a private company's battle.
Oh, it's not it's not a private battle. It was based on the town deciding that they didn't want any more ferries coming into the old harbor.
I would just say at this juncture, I don't think that's a priority for us to be in that battle with the PUC and interstate. And getting back to Josh's thing, I think I'm a little offended by Josh's position. I don't know if Josh's position, if he's the president or manager or just family member. I think, a small increase to the fees to help offset some of these costs and not burden our taxpayers is not a big request. And such an adversarial position, I think, is unfortunate.
I agree. It was, I think it was, I'm hoping that it was in a fit of pique, and that a cooler head will prevail, but that is not an approach, frankly, that works for me.
Oh, and this is not new. There was a fast ferry that came into the new harbor not too long ago.
Yeah.
So
It's unfortunate.
So what could,
So let
can
me
we-
just ask, I mean, obviously it's the most efficient way to collect our landing fee is to pay that company they take a portion of the landing fee in order to collect it and then remit it to us. What are our other options? Do we stop each person as they get to the parking lot? And, you know, I mean, it's
Yeah,
gonna take
there
4
are
hours
options.
to unload a boat if we stop each person and have them Apple Pay us for their $1.75. That's a pain in the neck. It is a lot more efficient for them to have to it, but I mean, do we need to start brainstorming on other methods of collection?
Again, I think you've identified the options, which are clearly the relationship that we have is most efficient and effective. If the town didn't have that relationship, we would presumably pursue other avenues. Would they be worth what we generated in revenue? That I can't answer at this moment.
so wouldn't the better way be to have the meeting like Keith is suggesting, get them over here and try to repair the relationship and also the, you know, the collection issue? I mean, I think we ought to talk.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
I'm always happy.
There are, our state representative and our state senator are saying that our time frame is our time frame upstate. So we need to act on this. And I think we need to act on it and then
Oh.
deal with interstate. Interstate, Nancy, did not show up. We've been asking for a meeting for them since I think we talked about this last summer, Millie, at one of our meetings about how can we get them in here earlier so that the public actually has the time to discuss with them. And then they didn't come.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt, Molly, but just to clarify, I was not suggesting a meeting and not acting on the landing fee. I mean, I think we owe it to the community and we owe it to our legislators to be clear about
Oh,
what
yeah.
we're asking for and to give them a resolution in hand. And if Interstate wants to talk next week, we'd be happy to talk to them.
Oh, yeah, I think we ought to
Right?
act tonight
Yeah.
on the
Yeah, so
resolution.
just so you know,
Yeah.
because I feel like I started that, I didn't mean in place of, I was just. David, Nancy.
David Lewis, I certainly wasn't prepared for this discussion tonight, but I feel that I need to share some of my own personal feelings. I've seen in the community, I've seen a disappearing lack of appreciation for the shoulder-to-shoulder relationship that we have enjoyed with Interstate going back generations. By that, I mean, at least my dad and the senior John Manowski. But that's continued throughout my entire life. But over the last few years, I've seen some lack of appreciation in the town and in the community and from the council in a negative direction of a lack of appreciation. So just bear with me because I'm going to have to draw facts back from recent memory, just as Nancy had to. 3 or 4 years ago, I'm going to say it was 4 years ago. Interstate was here in December timeframe, and there was a large turnout of individuals from the community, mostly to talk about the schedule. And there was there was a general feeling in the room amongst some of the participants that Block Island wanted a lot more concessions, wanted better service on the boats. And there was one individual contractor on Block Island who was interested in having equal accommodation on the boats coming to Block Island in the off-season for the seasonal workers. Obviously, he was one voice standing alone with that interest. There was no, Jeanette at the time got up and did speak, and then the lawyer was there speaking as well. And they spoke accurately, in my opinion, about how difficult it is to tailor a schedule in an off-season that actually accommodates the needs of different populations. The Block Island demographic that want as much time on the mainland as possible, the contracting demographic on the mainland that need as much time on Block Island as possible. And then there are local contractors who are relying on those off-island services to get the work done. It's hard to balance all those three competing constituencies. Nevertheless, some modest changes were made that first year, because believe me, my wife will tell you, I compare the schedule every year and see small incremental changes that I think are worth their while. To all the populations that need that boat, there's a little accommodation every year for just about all of those populations. Just have to be wanting to look for it and find it. The next year, the room with Interstate came in, and I was the only person there, believe it or not, in the audience. And I had made some comment to the meeting, acknowledging the little changes that had happened that year. The next year, they came in and they asked the town, one of the things it was a friendly meeting. There weren't many people in the audience. Could only have been me, perhaps. And one of the hot topics on Interstate's agenda was the NOAA was considering a limitation on ferry speed.
Yeah.
In the season that would affect the boats. And they asked for the town to write a supporting memorandum to NOAA in requesting a reconsideration of that rule. And the council denied that. And I thought that was short-sighted, in spite of the island's reputation and desire to be seen as environmentally conscious as possible. I just thought it was not in our best interest of standing shoulder to shoulder with an organization whom we needed and who also needed us. I don't believe that the Interstate, so now we get up to last year. No meeting was held last year, and now, but my examination of the schedule showed modest tweaks once again that didn't come out of any meeting on Block Island, but I'm going to give Jeanette credit, even though maybe the credit goes more broadly, that not only did this the Wednesday-Thursday schedule left Block Island at the same time, but the return time shifted from 3:45 to 4:15, adding a whole half an hour. But that was a significant change, because it also allowed the boat to stay until 6 p.m., depart at 6 p.m. was part of the trade-off on that. And I don't think anybody in the community acknowledged that. I know I acknowledged it to Jeanette, and she appreciated that. And she and I are probably the only people that know that. I would hope that somebody else from the town recognized that too, but my guess is that they didn't. In that same time period of the last couple of years, Interstate put up the website, on their website, the notification of when the boat was not going to be running. That was the first technical improvement to the purple flag. So all of a sudden, people could log into the website remotely, see that, know what to expect. This year, in October, they took another positive step forward. They took another positive step forward to say that to allow people to submit their cell phone number and get a push notification, removing the need to even go to the website and look. You could just rely on being told that not only was the boat not going to run this morning, but there was potential that it's Sunday, the boat may not run Monday. So if you need, the implied message is if you need to get off, you might want to consider leaving Sunday. Now, again, who acknowledged back to interstate how nice it was to have that? Small incremental changes, but where's the appreciation, the show of appreciation on Block Island? The last thing is, I'll say, and then I'll yield. I had made a suggestion to council after the Harborside fire, when that mutual aid, thank you to all the participants on the mainland, including New England Airlines and Interstate, for coming to our aid and actually having worked through the details of how mutual aid might work. Lucky us, 2 months ahead of the reality of needing it. And it was my recommendation that Interstate should be thanked in the same manner as all the mainland fire departments, but they weren't. It was a plaque of appreciation, but they didn't get the same recognition as the fire departments responding did. So maybe that's my own personal bias, but I have to understand I come back with a long history. 1, 2, 3, probably the oldest people in the room that would remember how far back this shoulder-to-shoulder relationship did work. So you'll excuse me if that one touches a sore point with you, because it touched a sore point with me on the opposite side.
Thank you, David.
Anyway, I would
As
just hope that
always.
you would take this into your thoughts. And I think at this point, it's time for reconciliation, not continuing an argument. And I'll leave it with that.
Yep.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, David. Green light.
This is about the landing fee. In reading the state statute, it's a fee. Maybe it's time it should be a tax. Fees seem to be optional. Taxes aren't. I don't know if the legislature wants to go there or not, but that bothered me that certain marinas don't collect the landing fee, but anyone who comes on a ferry pays for it. You mentioned we should collect our own landing fee, bypass interstate. I thought about that. The problem is we don't have the land. Where do we build the facility? And then I thought about my father and his business and how he lost his business in East Haven to eminent domain. Nothing more than East Haven wanted to redo Main Street, even though he offered to redo his building. That wasn't in their plan. Eminent domain, I'm not typically a fan, but would Interstate really like to give up part of their land by the ferry and make everybody walk off in single file? It would take forever to unload those boats. It always seems like Interstate has the town over a barrel. They're bringing the people to the island and costing the taxpayers all this money. So there are other options. So when you're brainstorming, obviously conversation would be your first step. But there are other options. And if Interstate doesn't want to collect it, based on the way the ordinance was written, I guess that's their right. But you have other options too, and I just wanted to
Thank you, Nancy.
put those into your brain.
Thank you. Hey, Jennifer.
Jennifer Phillips. Yeah, it's an unpleasant conversation, and obviously we all rely on Interstate. But my beef in this argument is we don't want another fast ferry. I mean, as I don't want to see another ferry coming in here. And if any of this is being caused by the fact that you're considering another high-speed ferry, to me, it's a no-brainer. You just say no to the high-speed ferry. The last thing we need is another ferry. How many ferries are there every day?
I
How
think
can
on
we
peak
even-
Days, it's 28 landings a day.
How can we even be considering that and letting the person who runs all the ferries here think that we're in favor of that at all?
Mm.
I'm appalled by the way they reacted. I'm not saying that they're faultless in it. But if the fast ferry is creating this, you've got to get rid of that. Get that off the table first.
Thank
That's
you,
my
Jennifer.
opinion.
Sure, Kim.
I can tell you're all sick of this already. But I just, like Nancy, I was there a long time. And I want to say that largely I agree with David that that interstate navigation, we should be trying to keep a good relationship with them. We should not be posturing as they are. If you've been watching for a long time, Nancy, you will agree that their lawyer, his way is right up in your face. Don't take it personally. That's how he is, and work with it. When we were fighting the fast ferry, it was because we didn't want more people coming to Block Island. We didn't want them to be getting off of hundreds of people getting off a boat at Ballards with the traffic congestion, with no restroom facilities. It wasn't going to be a year-round service, so it doesn't benefit us. There's the economic arguments about skimming the cream of the crop off of the economic base of the ferry system. But I think that any service that is not servicing Block Island year-round doesn't deserve our support either. And I'm sorry that the council didn't hold the position to oppose the fast ferry. But mostly I wanted to say, please don't drop your defensiveness. Work with Interstate. Get them here. I know it's not your fault that they're not here, but get them here and talk with them.
I think that's what we just suggested.
I know, but I'm hearing very hostile, the audacity of them to raise this. This is.
I didn't say audacity.
I
Kim, with
know
all
you
due
didn't.
respect.
No, I did not say you said it. I said I'm hearing that flavor coming from many of the voices there. And
But Kim, you've been
that's
on the
my
council
appointment.
Before, and you know that there's always been a meeting once a year.
I
where
know.
They come.
Yeah,
They
I
haven't
do know.
come since I've been on the council.
I'm not defending that.
I know, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Don't, I mean, the posturing of that we are so awful, like,
I'm just saying, I'm seeing posturing on both sides right here.
Yeah.
Drop the postures and pick up the phone.
That's, I think, what we suggested.
Can I just add something? Kim, you will, just to toss in the mix, you will remember, there were meetings where this room was full. This side of the room wanted more boats. This side of the room wanted less boats. And there was never a consensus that came out of those meetings. But, because as David said, there are competing interests. And they have tried over the years. So yes, you're right about Mike McElroy. He's a very good lawyer, but unfortunately, it would have been very different if it had been just Josh, I think. And we ought to just try to get this resolved as quickly as possible and as easily as possible. And let's not forget that we have a council member who is an employee of Interstate Navigation. So when you say they're not here, they get the, I don't want to push that point, but they get the information,
Yeah,
even when the Block Island Times doesn't cover it.
I think you want to push that idea.
Yeah, but don't forget, I don't know how many of you might have had times where you had to get off the island for a family crisis, and boy, they take care of you. It shouldn't be contentious. We ought to be able to just have a conversation.
You look like you were reaching for your microphone and
But it's probably, just an opportunity to reiterate that, in our conversation, there was, Josh and Interstate did express a willingness to continue to try to find a meeting time. And expressed that particularly if there was some willingness to accommodate Zoom for some of their participants, it could be sooner rather than later. So.
Great.
So
Right.
should we talk?
We're kind of closing in on this window, this resolution. So is that the goal here?
I thought no,
For
I
me,
think
the
we
goal-
were gonna do the resolution tonight regardless. And do the relationship after.
Okay.
But
So
was your
I
$1.75?
was in at $1.75.
Is that $1.75 plus the existing 50 or?
No, that
total-
would be the
total
gross landing fee.
$1.75?
Yeah, and I think Amy said, that's readily justifiable with, the costs that can be allocated to the line.
I
With
think it
inflation,
is.
Yes.
I think, yeah, but you were 160.
I was 168.
Yeah.
As Nancy has pointed out and others have pointed out, one of the challenges with the landing fee is that we pay it too, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to be mindful of that. But we also pay for the costs, you know, I mean, it's, you know, which pocket's it coming from, I guess. So, but anyway, that was, I thought $1.75 was, not an earth-shaking change.
So I don't know about you guys, I did get a lot of feedback from people today about this. And obviously, people who were like, couldn't Block Islanders get exempted? That
I would love
complicates
that.
things. We all know that. I'm not sure there's a legal way to do that. If there is, terrific. I don't know whether there is a legal way to do that. So I do think we have to be careful, right? Like I said at the last meeting, I think we always have to be really careful about, you know, a family with a couple of kids who goes off to swimming lessons every week or ballet lessons every week. I mean, I know people travel like that with their families. I did when my kids were little, and this kind of a uptick in the fee adds up. That being said, you know, that same family is benefiting from all these things that we're paying for, right? That they're still benefiting from, you know, the availability of daycare and police and fire and rescue and medical center. I'm not sure, I'm just talking in circles now, but I just want to say that I heard the people that talked to me about this. I don't think there is any legal way to do that. I
No.
just want to get that out there.
There's
So,
not.
Not that I didn't hear anybody, it's just. that I don't
Everybody
think
would
there's a
love to, but I
possibility.
don't think it's possible.
So you said $1.75. I had said $1. How about if we compromise at $1.50? Kristen, what do you think?
What was the recommendation with the map again?
It's in the
Okay.
$1.60s.
Not a precise science, but I came to 168. 117 was pure inflation. 168 incorporated our unique basket of goods.
And it's the 68 wrong, do we have to round up to the one?
A round number would be appropriate.
Second.
Can we go?
Is that all right?
170 is not a round number.
170.
I would really stick $1, 125, 150, 175. That
Say is your motion is 175. I'll second that. Discussion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no?
No.
Okay. So 3-1.
Yeah.
Millie.
So we can get that right to our representatives, right?
yes.
So given the time that we've put into this, do we need to do number 3?
Well,
I
I
mean,
would,
we're going to be talking about, it, right?
they have, the PUC has given interstate till
Right.
April 14th.
Right.
I just was checking on the dates. So we have until the 14th if we wanted to reconsider.
Right.
So I will reach out again tomorrow and see if there is time that aligns with any of our existing agendas next week. If not, I will bring back some alternatives to the council. More meetings, yes.
Great. Should we get Bill? Bill? Exactly. Did he hold the freight train tonight?
Doesn't make any difference
No.
as to whether the agreements, but the one that I got Amy's, I got Mona's, and when I went to get Millie, I got Mona.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, right, but yeah. Oh, yeah, I didn't even know. Glad somebody's reading it. All right, act to extend the appointments and employee agreements between the town of New Shoreham and Amy Lewis Land, Mona Dwyer Helterline, and Millicent Hyatt as interim town manager, interim finance director, and interim town clerk respectively. I just want to say, I think I'm speaking for everybody how much we appreciate the work that's been going on. Frankly, I feel like the atmosphere has changed. I know that's hard to put a finger on, but I just appreciate all the work you're doing.
Hit the ground running.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion
For all three?
all three.
Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. I have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.